Hi guys, and welcome to episode 3 of the Live Motocross podcast. I'm Sophie McGinn, and joining me today we've got Darren Bartholomew. Yes, I roped him into another episode with me.
Hi Soph, how you doing guys out there? Welcome to the show. Well, I'll let you introduce our absolute legendary star on the show today, Soph.
So excited about this, aren't you? I think you've been giddy for the past hour I've been on
I
the phone to you. So we have one of the legends in the sport, 500cc multiple world champion and motocross legend, Dave Thorpe.
Hi, you guys.
How are you getting on?
Yeah, all good. We're in lockdown here in sunny Devon, as most of the country is, yeah.
Well, at least we managed to get you figured out on the podcast now. We had a bit of techie issues this morning, didn't we?
Yeah, well, I did. You didn't.
Oh, that's just the fun and games, mate. Don't worry about it. But happy to have you on, mate. And as we said off air, you are the reason why I got into the sport in the first place. My dad took me to Hawkston and to Farley Castle, and from watching you in the days when I was a kid, that was it. That was my introduction to motocross, and I just wanted to be a part of it from that way onwards. So thank you so much for that, mate. You have been an absolute legend and an inspiration in our sport. I will say that up front.
That's nice.
We wanted to get you on the podcast, Dave, because we wanted to sort of go in depth with you about how you got started in the sport, what it was like for you as a kid coming into the sport of motocross. What was your sort of earliest memories of going to motocross, and was there anyone you kind of looked up to, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, my introduction into what was scrambling in those days, of course, wasn't motocross. My dad, when he come out of the army, he used to ride motocross in the Southeastern Centre.
Yeah.
And as a baby, obviously, we went as a family. Not that I remember it. I see the pictures, but I used to go and support my dad with my mum.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was about 3 years old, Dad and his friend Derek Evans, they made a very small bike for me, because in those days you couldn't go to a shop and buy a bike.
Yeah.
For a child. It was all homemade. So that bike kind of went on the trailer with my dad's bike, and my dad would race, and then I would have a little ride round afterwards. And that bike was a geared bike, and my dad used to sort of teach me to change gear and basically run alongside me and say change down, brake, all the things that you still have to do when you teach someone from the beginning. And then schoolboy motocross was just getting going really then. And my dad and Dennis made a bigger bike when I was 5 years old. And then I had my first race in, I think it was Oxford area. And really the schoolboy stuff kind of just started to gain momentum. So we used to ride around where we lived. And then my dad, he started to take me a little bit further away, so I had more experience, on different tracks. We went to Wales, which in those days seemed a million miles away to where I lived. And in between all of the riding, Dad used to take me to watch. Used to watch the Hants Grand International on Good Friday. The Ken Hall Motocross on Bank Holiday Monday in August. And those events, there was lots of great British riders, Banks, Bickers, Vic Allen, Vic Eastwood. So he used to really get there. We used to get there early so he could get in without paying. And he used to say to me, look, Dave, we're going to have a walk around, but the bottom line is you need to be back here at 4:30. And I was about 8 or 9 years old then. And I specifically remember the kennel. We used to sit on the bank in all the crowds and just watch the racing. And, they're really happy memories for me as a child, going to watch the races with Dad. And the other little bonus that I had was Dad was workshop manager at Comerford at Thames Ditton. And that shop was the main workshop for the factory Bultaco team. So on a Saturday, I used to sort of go to work sometimes with Dad and sit in the corner of the workshop and watched Vic Allen and Reg May, who was the tuner and the engine guy there then. So I kind of had a little bit of an insight into how it all worked from a very early age when I was a boy.
Mm-hmm.
Vic Allen was a lot of help to me as a child when I was a child, because I used to be able to go out and watch him ride and talk to him. And he was the first person actually to, I think I was about 11.
Yeah.
He asked me once if I wanted to have a go on his, I think it was a 360 Sherpa. So that was my first introduction onto a big open class bike. And I still remember that now. It was over on Haywards Heath. And I remember riding it as a youngster and thinking, oh my God, this could go to the moon. It was so fast.
I was going to say, that's a beast of a bike, mate, to start off with.
Yeah, it was. Happy memories for me. Really happy memories.
So moving on into your youth career then, Dave, obviously I'm going to read these stats out because they're pretty impressive, because I know you won't, but 76, 77, 78, three-time British schoolboy champion. And like you say, the schoolboy movement was really starting to make way then. 79, 500t British under 18 champion, which is phenomenal. And then 1980 went on to become obviously the first British champion on the 500 then as well. Plus the fact, me and Sophie talking about this off air, that you had a stint in the AMCA as well, I believe.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you missed that bit out. So when I was, what was I? When I was just coming up for 15, my dad wrote to the ACU and said, look, Dave is a big lad on a 125. I'd won everything that I possibly could. Would they consider allowing me to go into the ACU a year early? Because in those days you had to be 16. And the answer was no. So Dad looked at alternatives, and he hooked up with Don Green at the AMCA. And Don was a massive influence for me at that point, because it allowed me to ride a 250 at 15, which I couldn't do in the ACU. But it also gave me an amazing amount of experience with different people. Whilst the AMCA was considered, and still is, an amateur organisation, there was still some really good riders in there that really taught me a lot through that period. And it also gave me my first taste of international motocross. Don managed to get me an entry into Switzerland, Amariswil, and it was a big part of growing up for me in the AMCA.
What was it like turning up for you then, into the first kind of go into the adult scene then, as it were? I mean, were you daunted by it, or did you just believe in yourself, knowing that you had the speed and whatever else? How did you tackle it?
Well, it wasn't easy for me. I'm not, I didn't win everything by any means in the early days. My MCA year was with Honda on the Red Rocket, which was an amazing bike. And then Kawasaki come along with an offer to go into the ACU. Honda were keen for me to stay another year in the AMCA, but Dad wanted me to go up. So at the end of my first year with the AMCA, I needed to get my expert points in the ACU. So I did various races around the country where I could get my points. And in those days, you had junior and expert races. And at the end of the day, you had an all-comers. Mm-hmm. And in that all-comers race, I was allowed to race. And I had some, real great races with people that I'd looked up with over the years. And it just slowly progressed, really. It wasn't easy in the beginning by any means. There were times in my life where I thought, you know what, this I don't know if this is going to happen, because it doesn't always go the way you want it to go, especially in racing, because lots of different things happen. But fortunately, it kind of started to take shape.
And another thing a lot of people probably won't know about you, Dave, as well, is you could have gone a different way altogether, and you could have had a professional footballing contract with Queen's Park Rangers, couldn't you? We've seen the likes of Cal Crutchlow obviously taking the 50-50 jump and go into MotoGP in the end. So you had a very similar background, and you could have easily have gone the football route.
Well, I don't know that it would have been easy, and people,
but nothing.
People talk about the football. I mean, I love football. Dad when I was growing up, Dad was always very mindful that I didn't get bored with riding my bike. So, you know, through the winter, from the end of September through to March, I never used to ride my bike at all. And he used to be very keen for me to pursue other sports. And in my primary school and senior school, they were very sport-minded. So I played an awful lot of soccer, rugby, basketball, swimming. I did everything that I possibly could. But the football, I kind of had a group of friends that we all used to play together. And then we went from district to county. And then, of course, I had my trials at QPR about the same time as the Honda deal come along for the AMCA. But kind of my take on it was, and still is, you know, I kind of, whilst I can be a team player, it's not my preference. I kind of like individual sports where you're in charge of your own destiny. So that was kind of, at 15, that was my mindset, that, you know, I like the fact that when I sat on the line at a race, it was all about me and the bike. Whereas in a team sport, you know, you rely on, in soccer, 10 other people. So, yeah, that was always my mindset.
And I think any person that has swung a leg over a bike completely gets that. At the end of the day, it's down to you and your machine, and there's nothing else that matters. It's just down to yourself. So we get that. Do you have any regrets over that decision at all, or was it very straightforward and clean cut for you?
Oh no, very straightforward. I mean, you know, one thing that Dad always said to me when I was growing up was, Dave, if you work hard in this sport, you'll do well, because I love, and still do, love riding bikes. You know, I kind of love going out on the trails now. I'm now 57 now, so I kind of, motorbikes is my love. I love two-wheel motorbikes, and I just enjoy it, whether it was racing in the 80s or even now just going out and riding. It's you kind of disconnect from the world, and you've got your helmet on and you're in your own little zone, and I kind of like that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Everyone seems to just go in their own little bubble, don't they? And it seems to be what everyone's missing at the moment, unfortunately.
I think it's quite fitting that comes up now, because, you know, come the other side of this COVID-19, I think everybody is just going to invest in getting back to basics and just doing and enjoying the things that they love, you know. So it's so much better time. So let's hope that comes out more into fruition, really.
Yeah.
So just one of the questions that I wanted to jump in on as well. What was your first sort of GP like for you? How did that come about?
So May the 26th, 1980.
Wow, that's impressive for a start.
I broke my leg. I broke my leg very badly in Bathensway. Rider error, I made a mistake, and unfortunately the bike hit me on the way through. And that was the beginning of a very long period for Dad and I, because we went to Belgium, a doctor called Dr. De Win, who was held in a similar vein to Dr. Klaus now, the guy that fixes most of the motocross riders. They drove me there through the night. I woke up in the morning, having had my op, to a load of nuns around my bed, which honestly,
oh my God,
absolutely freaked me out, because I thought,
I was going to say, I thought it was your last calling.
But the upshot of that is the operation didn't go well. I got an infection in the leg, and it just wasn't healing. And then the only good thing to come out of that experience was that I met Mr. Hadfield, and Mr. Hadfield was the FIM doctor. He became a real good personal friend to me, and the upshot is he kind of fixed my leg. He took all my plates out, took all the infection out, and it was touch and go for a while what was going to happen. But 13 months later, I managed to get on a bike again. So I started to ride in June 1981. And I think my first Grand Prix was either July or August, was the French Grand Prix at a place called Metz, METZ. And I did all right. I think from memory, I might have had a 7th and a 12th or something. I rode all right. I suffered with the heat because obviously I hadn't ridden for so long and the conditioning wasn't good. But that was my first Grand Prix.
And of course, then in your professional career, things really started to move on quite quickly for then in the Grand Prix. The Ney Factory Honda team in '83, Grand Prix winner in '84.
Well, I actually won my first Grand Prix race in '82.
Okay, whereabouts was that? Where was that?
I think I won. I'm not sure which way around it is. People will remember it better than me. But I won a race at Farley. Pretty sure I won a race at Farley in '82.
Yeah, you did. It was you won from Vromans and Lackey.
Yeah, and then I think the second race, I think I was third. I might be wrong.
Yeah, Lackey, Vromans and Thorpe. It was complete turnaround from the first moto.
Yeah, so Brad won the Grand Prix based on time, because in those days they used to put the two times together. And I also won a race in a track that was really good for me in the years to come, at Sittendorf in Austria. I think I went 1-3 there, and Brad went, unfortunately, 3-1 as well. So he beat me on the overall. So those 82, Kawasaki had with Alec Wright, had a bike that was, the engine configuration was, for me, was a 443. So not a 499 like Brad was riding. It was a 443, and that was an amazing bike for me because it was a rider friendly bike, wasn't an arm wrencher, and at that time of my career, it allowed me to race. I wasn't scared of the bike. But you quite rightly say, the end of '82, Honda approached me again. I kind of feel a little bit sorry for the lads in the UK now, the youth, because I had the benefit of Graham Noyce, Neil Hudson in the British Championships with me. And whilst that was good for my development, it also put me in the spotlight of the Grand Prix teams. So when Graham and Neil used to come, they used to bring an entourage of Japanese, and that allowed the Japanese to see me in action over the British Championships, and it really put my name at the front. Even though my results were okay and I was progressing well, it just put me in, should we say, the shop window. And without Graham and Neil being there, without the Japanese there, I don't know if I'd have got that break at the end of '82.
Yeah, just jumping back to obviously you mentioned about Farley as well. What was that like for you, sort of winning, the first home GP there? What was that like?
What you mean in '82? Yeah, well, it came out of nowhere. I mean, again, Farley was a track that was really kind to me in the years ahead as well, but it kind of suited me, as did Sittendorf in Austria. It was a grassy based track with lots of cambers and everything that I'd grown up on. So it was, for me, it was a track that I felt at home with immediately. But the thing with the British Grand Prix is, as a British rider, if you're riding well and you get the crowd behind you, there's no better feeling.
I can only imagine. I mean, I can remember being in the crowd with my dad and just screaming every single lap as you come by. But as you say, going back to Sittendorf and Farley, they were both good tracks for you, very natural flowing tracks. But I read, I don't know if it's true or not, but there was a story I read about you actually turning up to the wrong Sittendorf. Is that right, in the very beginning?
So when Dad and I first started to do Grand Prix, we used to travel together in a Mercedes van, I think it was, and I was the map reader. And
oh dear! Yeah. So this is down on you then.
Definitely. And we turned up where we thought we were, and we were asking around the village where the track was. No one had a clue. And then we got our map out, and they pointed out that we were miles away.
Oh no!
So it didn't start the weekend well for me, because we got there very late. And I didn't get to see the track, but the next morning I was up bright and early, and I had a good walk round, and I just thought, you know what, this has got my name all over it. I just felt that it was a good track for me.
I just, off the back of that question, knowing how close you were with your dad in those early days, do you honestly think you'd have accomplished as much as you did without him by your side?
No.
No? I kind of knew that was going to be the answer, but I just wondered. But he was a very big influence, wasn't he? Both because I can remember watching you on the start line at Hawkson thinking, and then this is very, especially we've got what's going on at the moment in the world. Both myself and Soph get very anxious about lots of things in life in general. And we have this affinity together, don't we, Soph, when these things. And from a racing point of view, I always used to get anxious before the line and things like this. But when I remember, the one thing I did used to take away from you was how calm you were before a race. Like nothing ever seemed to bother you, as big as it was. How did you cope with that back in the day?
To be fair, Dad, my mum and Dad brought me up in a very basic but straight way. There was right and wrong. There was no grey area.
Mm-hmm.
You always do your best, and you're always honest. And they were the kind of things that they brought me up to. And in the racing, I find bike riding very natural. I've been very lucky with that. It's not something that I find difficult. And I kind of feel that when I'm on a bike, I'm at home. So whilst, the races, I was always calm and quite chatty, but if I tell you what year, in 1989, Farley Castle, there was thousands of people there. And I remember going to the line and people, as I rode down, they were tapping me on the shoulder. And I remember getting tears in my eyes.
Wow.
It kind of, it's a passion, isn't it? And,
it's very humbling, I think, mate, is the quick answer to that, because obviously that was the year you had 2 moto wins.
Yeah, but when I sat on the line, I had tears in my eyes, and I had to take my goggles off and wipe them because I didn't want the tears.
It was just that emotional.
Yeah, it's that passion, isn't it? It's what it's all
definitely.
About.
Would you say that was probably one of your favourite career moments, Dave?
89.
Yeah, is that one of the main things that kind of sticks in your head about with Farley?
Yeah, I kind of all the British Grand Prix that I did well at, they all stick in my mind because, like I said just now, when you're British or you're French, wherever you are, when you race your home Grand Prix, and you want to perform for the people that are there, your home crowd.
Yeah.
And when that all works for you, there's no better feeling, And then the flip side of that is, when you have your British Grand Prix and it doesn't quite work out, like for me at Hawkstone in 86, I kind of, when I got there on that Sunday morning, I knew it wasn't my day.
You just get that feeling, don't you?
Why do you say that, Dave? What made it?
When any professional motocross rider will tell you that, you train for the season, but in that season you have little highs and lows. Sometimes you're just not feeling it, or you feel that your fitness has just dropped. And, that day at Hawkstone, to do well against Eric, George, Andre Malher, any of the brilliant sand riders that were around in that time, you had to be on top of your game in physical and riding wise. And I knew that day that it just wasn't quite there for me. Even though in 86 I won the championship, I've said many a time, I never felt that the 86 season flowed. I felt it was a tough year. It was just, every race was a grind. And I don't know whether that was the burden of carrying the number 1 plate for the first time, but I just felt that it was a tough year.
I was going to say that burden on that number 1 plate, bearing in mind, folks, as well, that it was live on TV, if I remember right, the second race in particular, 20,000 plus fans. And then I think, didn't you crash in the first race and had to come back?
Yeah, I crashed through the whip, and it was a tough day in the office for me. I mean, I didn't ride too bad. For most people, I think I was top 5 or top 6 in both races, which, in the Grand Prix season wasn't a disaster. But for me, the British Grand Prix, where you want to do so well for your home fans, it was definitely disappointing.
me and myself and Soph obviously quite get at Hawkston quite a bit with the commentary and work and things like that. And one of the things that we wanted to ask you, and just what your thoughts were, 1984, if I can take you back to then, at Hawkston, and again on TV, you managed to win both races. But what I wanted to ask is, and not a lot of people know this, I don't think, unless they were actually there. It was the year that Joe Bay jumped the big double jump.
Yeah.
And you actually tried it in practice, didn't you?
Yeah.
Right?
I did. It was one of those. I mean, leading up to that race, my form wasn't brilliant. Whilst I won the Grand Prix in Sweden, it wasn't amazing. I was sort of there or thereabouts, but not winning regularly enough. And I took 2 weeks off. At that time, Sharon and I had a little boy, Lewis, and we had 2 weeks off. We went to Brighton. I never run. I never trained. I literally had 2 weeks away. I didn't even practice. I just kept away from everything. And I turned up at Hawkstone really refreshed, really buzzing. And right from the very first lap, I just, the opposite of 86, I just thought this has got my name on it. I felt strong. I felt really sharp. And having that break had really done me some good. And someone after the first practice said to me, George is jumping that jump, or he's eyeing up to jump the jump, I think it was at that point. And my dad interjected in the conversation. He said, Dave, you don't need to do that. I said, Dad, I know, I'm all right. I'm not going to do it. Anyway, in time practice, I was 3 seconds that quicker than anybody. I went out on the first lap, and, many a motocrosser that's listening to this will know, on a sand track, to get the flying lap, they're always on the beginning, 1, 2, or 3. And I literally, I was hanging off the back of that Honda like a bit of washing for that lap. I don't even think I breathed all the way around. But I got the lap in. That gave me that buffer. And I come in and I said to Dad, is he jumping that jump? And he said, yeah, but Dave, you don't need to do it because you're 3 seconds quicker. So I went round, and on the last lap I rode round and I parked my bike. I remember it clear as day. I parked my bike at the top of the sandpit. And I thought, I've got to do this jump. I've got to do this jump. And unbeknownst to me, Eric had tried it 5 minutes before me and broke his leg.
It ended up a very different way, didn't it?
Broke his leg. So I dropped it into second, into third, and I was going at it. And I remember hitting it, and we've all been there. Everybody that's listening to this has been there. As soon as I took off, I just thought, I'm not going quick enough.
We're in trouble here.
Big trouble. So I had the big panic rev. And luckily for me, I hit the upspace and it kind of bounced me somehow. And there was no skill involved, trust me, it was pure luck. But somehow I stayed on it. And I don't know whether that hurt me in my pride or the race that my dad gave me when I got back in. Because Dad was not impressed. He said, you could have blown it all. Look at him. And I looked across in Eric's awning and they were injecting his leg and sort of trying to make him so that he could ride. So George, an iconic picture of George jumping over Andre.
It was it could have been altogether sinister moment for you, really.
It could have ended what was going to be the beginning of quite a good run for me.
And just that moment in time. But I think from everything I've heard from you, you almost felt like you had to do it in a way.
You do. You feel a bit of peer pressure, whatever level you ride at, whether you're out with your mates, if your mate jumps a jump, there is a part of you that thinks, I've got to do that as well. And
you have to.
It's one of those. Yeah, it's one of those things that when you're at that level and someone on your level is jumping, you think, oh yeah, I've got to do that.
On nowhere near the same scale, we had a local track to us called Shobden, which we all love in the AMCA that we did, and it was the first time they built a triple in, and I can remember coming round and saying to my dad, if I get the whole shot, Dad, I'm just going to do it. And I did, and I came round, and it's just that feeling that I just thought, and I was getting nowhere near, but probably 2 seconds a lap from it. But on the last lap, somebody had changed my line. They were in my line, and I'll always forget it, or try to forget it at least, because I had another line, cased the triple completely. The bike cartwheeled, went like 50 yards down the track, all bent over. I managed to wind myself, got underneath the ropes, and an old farmer boy with a crook stick, I could always remember him, came over to me. If I wasn't in enough pain, tapped me and said, "Boy, that's the best entertainment I've had all day," and just walked off. So, I mean, nowhere near as monumental as yours, mate, and no way would I have had the cojones to do that, I don't think. But, you know, I think everybody's been there and done it. But just off the back of that, Dave, then, and I'm going to really put you on the spot now, of the Grand Prix UK tracks then, did you have a preference to Hawkston or Farley? Which one?
I didn't, to be honest, I didn't mind either, as long as I had a good bit of form behind me and everything was pretty good, no injuries, you know, like I've won at Hawkstone, I've won at Farley, I've been beaten at Hawkstone, I've been beaten at Farley. My Farley 87, I had a big problem with my shoulder, which Mr. Hadfield injected. I did quite well in the first race. The second race, the painkillers wore off. But out of the two, no, I didn't mind. As long as I was in good form, you know, that was always the key, because to beat, as I said before, the Belgium and the Dutch boys in Hawkstone, you had to be in good shape.
And that goes back to the Farley incident, if I remember back, where the English fan threw beer in the front of Joe Bay's face.
I think that was 87, wasn't it?
Was that 87? Yeah.
Yeah, they were dropping it off the bridge over the track.
Off the bridge, yeah. I was just up from there, off the jump, off the big downhill. What were your thoughts going back to that then? I mean, the crowd was immensely passionate. What did you think as a pro rider, and obviously being where you were at the time?
To be honest, we've all experienced different things. You know, it's you know, you never like to see it when it's against a competitor, and I think, you know, the club asked me to go on the mic and just ask people just to behave, you know, but passions run quite high, you know. In 85 at Namur, just before I come down to the cafe where the pub was, somebody pushed a straw bale off the top and caught my shoulder and just almost pulled me off the bike, but didn't. You know, you get people that are extremely passionate for their own riders, and it's just life, isn't it? It's just how it is. In 89, Eric and I had an amazing race at Namur, and when I come down past the pub onto the road, people were spraying beer in my face, and I was thinking to myself, oh, Eric's Belgian fans, they're not going to get me. They're not going to let it bother me. And unbeknownst to me, the same people were spraying the same beer in Eric's face, and he was thinking, bloody British, what are they doing now? So we joked about it in the evening, because I thought it was his fans and he thought it was my fans, but in the end we were both getting.
Well, I'm glad. The only thing I could say to that, mate, is I'm glad it was beer, really, because it could have been worse, it was, really, if you think about it.
It's not what you want in the middle of a 40-minute moto tasting beer.
No.
Taste in the evening, not during the race.
I mean, getting back to that, 40 minutes plus 2 laps, Soph, as well, in a moto.
40 minutes
twice.
plus 2.
Oh, it's just unheard of now, isn't it? I mean, I can remember you, Dave, as well, being on that. You remember that edition of DBR when you were on the front cover, when you were doing your training, doing the flies, I think it was?
I try not to, because my friends now regularly take the mickey out of that picture.
But not going to lie, you were that training regime then, like, you had to do it, otherwise you were never going to be, even if you thought you had a chance. I mean, there's no way. I mean, you were a big guy back in the day as well, weren't you? Let's be honest. So that training regime was, at that time, was almost unheard of, really, wasn't it?
Well, I've always enjoyed the physical aspect of racing, like the training and that, and I think if you enjoy that part of racing, then I think
it makes it a lot easier for you, I guess.
It gives you a little bit of a head start. If you're a person that doesn't really like the physical side of it, then motocross, you know, is always going to be a difficult sport for you.
So jumping forward to sort of like more current times at the moment. Obviously you've got the Bill-based team with the boys, with Tommy and Steve and that lot. How did that sort of come about for you?
You mean from the beginning? Yeah.
So how did sort of the teams come about?
I did. A friend of mine called Steve Hyde, who sadly he's not here now with us. He had a business interest in CCM, and CCM with Austin Clues. They were doing some projects of designing some chassis for motocross. So they kind of asked me if I would sort of front that project with them, and we went Grand Prix racing. So it kind of got me back into the sport. And then for different reasons that stopped. And then I decided to start up a team on my own. And obviously went down the Honda route, and then slowly we attracted sponsors, and that's where it's kind of grown from. I think that was, I want to say 10 or 12 years ago now. Time flies, doesn't it?
That was the Cat Honda team, was it, from memory?
The Cat Honda team was after I finished racing. So that was 99, 2000.
Right,
but
okay.
This is much, much further along the line into the sort of what is the Bill-based team now.
So that's how it's evolved, really. As team manager, then, do you have any, or do you try and have any influence with regards to your riders? I mean, I've noticed trackside that you do quite a lot of spotting. For instance, you might walk a track and help them out that way. Wise, we see a lot in World Superbike and MotoGP now. What is your major role? Would you consider then in your team?
Well, it's quite easily structured here, really. Anything to do with racing. In terms of spare parts and sponsored stuff is my son Ryan. Ryan takes care of the day-to-day stuff in the race team. I deal with the riders in terms of contract and any problems that we have, and I deal directly with the sponsors in attracting new sponsors and entertaining the current ones. I like to be on hand with the guys when I can. Jake and Tommy and Stephen, I've got currently 3 riders that are very professional. They know their jobs. They certainly don't need me sticking their nose in. When we're at the races, if I see things, we'll chat through quietly. But one thing I've learned as I've got older is that you can talk to people of what you see and what you don't see, and if they take it on board, then happy days, and if they don't, then it never offends me, and I always make that quite clear with the guys. I kind of I know how difficult it is to ride the bikes at speed, and what you see from the side is not always what you see behind the bars. But I've got 3 guys that have got a vast amount of experience between them, so it's not something where I'm of the opinion it's my way or no way. It's just not how we are.
Yeah, and also you've got the off-road school as well.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that and what people can come and try out and stuff.
2 off-road schools. So we've got the Dave Thorpe Honda Off-Road, which is a trail school, which is aimed at people that may have ridden a bit in their youth and moved away from the sport, or maybe been through motocross, then stopped, and then just want to get back into it. And that's based down here in Somerset. And then we've got the Honda Adventure School, which is the Africa Twin based bike. We do 2-day and 1-day events there. And that's really based on people that, maybe want to go and do some overseas riding, some touring, and they might come across some green lanes or forestry type tracks, and they want to just feel comfortable about riding on those. And also you've got people that, are considering investing in an Africa Twin. And they can come and ride it for a day or 2 with us and, appraise the bike and everything that it can do.
Now, how sort of tempting is it for you to kind of get on the bikes and get involved when you've got experience days going? Because I would be out every day.
For the Africa Twin business, is Pat Jackson is the chief instructor there, and we have three other instructors that we call upon, who are also really skilled and really good coaches. I do go to that school occasionally, especially if we've got an event involving any of our corporate sponsors or Honda. The Dave Thorpe Honda off-road one, I front 99.9% of those, which I thoroughly enjoy. And the bit that I like about it as well is because, whilst we meet and greet everybody and we have teas and coffees and we sign up and we do all the briefing, I do get people at lunch, they say to me, "You can ride all right, actually. Have you ridden that?" And I do like that element of what we do because, it's just, I don't publicise what I've done at all in the briefing, and we just chat like normal, and it does make me chuckle.
Wow, I didn't think who doesn't know who Dave Thorpe is, especially coming on the school like that. But I think again, it's part of your nature. Is very humbling, I think, as well, mate, to get to hear that.
Yeah, there is, but it also shows, our school is not really a competition school. It's about people that may have been in it for a short period of time or a long period of time, but just want to come back and have a go.
Exactly, just getting back to being on a motorcycle, and spending the day on one and just having that smile, that's what it's about when you get off there. In the British scene, obviously this year, I mean, I consider that when we do come racing, Tommy Searle, Jake Nichols and Steve Clark being one of the strongest teams that you could probably pick on paper from the British scene. But I just wanted to ask the question, and I'm going to throw this out completely openly, and doesn't matter what era, if money was no object and you had the pick of any particular rider, whether it be American, European, money no object, from any era, who would you have considered?
Ooh, that's a good one.
And the reasoning behind it. I know I put you on the spot there.
Go back to my day. So, like in my time when I was racing, I spent a lot of time in Japan with Ricky Johnson, David Bailey, and Johnny O'Mara, and those three people were extremely just very articulate riders. Their technical ability was amazing. Their physical attributes were amazing. So in my time, it would be one of those three. If not all of them, if money was no object.
Wow. Okay. How do you feel then off the back of that question? Because obviously you beat Jeff Ward and David Bailey in the MX of Nations, going in a straight up heads to head. Does that give you any more kind of, do you feel happier about that, given the fact that you thought they were so talented, and to do that to them?
Yeah, but they also whooped my ass at Majora. So, the Donations is a unique event because it goes back to what I said about the British Grand Prix. It's about people falling on form on that day. And, I had some great races with them at Geldorf in Germany, and they would quite rightly say they had some great races against me at Majora. So, it's...
swings and roundabouts, I guess. But
those guys were amazing athletes in their time.
And obviously, as manager of the MX Nations team as well, how did it feel for you standing up on that podium with obviously Heron, Nicol and Malin out of your pick of your iconic team that it is now?
Well, it was great. I mean, for those three guys, it was a dream come true because I don't think anybody would have put a great deal of money on us before we went to the event. And they between the three of them rode out of their skin. We had a good roll of the dice on the day, a bit of luck, which everybody needs. But that would have been one of the highlights of their careers because it was a fantastic achievement for all three of them to win the Donations.
Super. Moving on later into your career as well, of course, and a lot of people know this because they normally say the 85, 86, 89 World Championships. But of course, you are the 2007 Vets World Champion as well, and had some good victories back again at Namur and Donington Park.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
There's a butt coming here, though, I fear. Did you hear that there, so?
It was the reason Giuseppe started the Vets thing was to try and entice people like myself to race. But I think he quickly worked out that, most people that have raced at the highest level were involved with teams, and it wasn't possible for them to work as a Grand Prix coach or team manager and race at that weekend. But I enjoyed it. It's to my dad even now, if people ask me, and I do get asked a lot to do various races, whether it be Vets or whatever, my dad always says to me, why do you want to race, Dave? You can run, cycle, swim, you can do everything you want to do with, like, my daughter, my grandson, I can do everything. He said, why do you want to put that at risk? And there is no answer for that with me, when you invite the word race. What really stuck in my mind was the last year I did the Vets, I think was 2000, and I think it was 8. Unfortunately for me, there was a round at Lommel, and even in my heyday in the 80s, I wouldn't even test at Lommel. If Honda said to me, we're going to test at Lommel, I used to say, let me know how you get on. Because honestly, I find Lommel probably one of the most difficult tracks in the world. And it was, you got to remember in the 80s, Eric and Andre were very good sand riders. And when we tested, I just didn't want to get my butt kicked when we tested. I wanted to always be on a high. So I always used to do everything in my power not to go. But going back to the vet race, I tried to do a fast lap towards the end, tried to get one more in, and my left foot caught the bank as I jumped across the start straight, and it kind of threw my leg over the side of the bike, which dropped my shoulder down on the throttle, which I got a big handful of whiskey throttle, and I let the bike go.
Oh no.
And I remember rolling, but looking where my bike was going. It was going dead straight up the track, but the track went left at the end. And I just, I kind of knew that something was going to horrible. So I kind of literally, when I finished rolling, I just started to run because I knew my bike was going to the crowd. And when I got there, unfortunately, a lady, a marshal, the bike had hit her badly and it broke her leg. And that was really the end of my racing, because I kind of looked at myself, and I know it can happen anywhere for any one of us, but the words that my dad said, why, really sort of resonated in my mind. So I kind of stopped racing from that point on, really.
Well, it's a shame, but I can't kind of get the point. I mean, I was very close to, remember the British Grand Prix at Matterley when Geyser landed in the crowd? Yeah, literally about 4 or 5 people away from me that was, and that was as scary as hell. So I can only imagine what was going through your mind then. I should imagine it's pretty scary, but you can see the thought process into why you came to a conclusion there, I guess.
Yeah, it was just parents are not normally wrong on some things, and Dad was pretty right there.
So I think from this point, I think we'll move on to the Q&A, shall we?
Oh, mate, are you ready for this? Because there are some goodies in this.
To be fair, a couple of them we have already touched on, but there is some random ones thrown in there. I'll give them that. So this is one of the questions from Sean Bass on the website this week on Live. He said, "Hi Dave, when you did AMCA for a couple of years, what memories did the AMCA leave you?" And he's also put a little note in as well. He said, "I remember you helping me up Browns Hill with better line choice. Legend."
Only but good memories with the AMCA. A fantastic opportunity, lovely people, great tracks, and it gave me as I said before, my first taste of international racing. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it all. It was a big part of what made me the rider that I was.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of things that we've picked up on from your answers, Dave, is do you believe in fate? I mean, there's a couple of things there that have kind of swayed your career and possibly in a different way in your thought process that might not have happened unless these certain places that had fallen into place. Really.
I do, and you know, Jake, who rides with me now, he kind of we both have a little bit of a similar process that, you know, in racing to get to a race or whatever, if you have to start pushing, i.e. I'll give you an example, and I hope Jake don't mind me saying it, but when Jake was destined to be British champion a couple of years ago, the week before his ill-fated race at Blacksall, we had a small problem with his bike, and in a nutshell, Jake wanted to do the local race at Blacksall, and we couldn't quite get his bike back to him in time, so they swapped an engine, and it kind of, we were all up against it, he was up against it, but anyway, he got his bike done. And then he went and raced, and we know that he was very unlucky to break his leg. But we often talk about that now, you know, when we have scenarios where we're sort of up against something, and we kind of both say to ourselves, are we really meant to be here doing this today or next week or whatever? And we have that conversation together. So there is a part of me that if I've got to really push to do something, then sometimes something in me says, don't bother, Dave.
And especially your dad as well. I mean, he seemed to be kind of an influence over you with there as well. And one of the things I wanted to touch on is Jake, and obviously his recovery since that broken leg, of course. I mean, he is one of the nicest and fastest guys on the circuit, let's be honest. But the boy has had no luck whatsoever, has he, over his career? What are your thoughts on that?
He's been incredibly unlucky. And, you know, what I like about Jake is, you know, if you it's a very strong family unit up there in Ipswich, you know, with his mum and dad and his wife, Blue. You know, it's a pretty tight-knit family. And, you know, they are so passionate about the racing. You know, Jake's very much like me. He loves to ride his bike, whether it be motocross, enduro, mountain bike. He just loves to be out on two wheels. And, you know, you look back on his career and he's had some really big highs, but then he's had some really unlucky blows right at the wrong point. And I guess that's, you know, all the professional racers, we have that. We can all look back and say woulda, shoulda. But yeah, Jake has been unlucky, and I particularly felt sorry for him in 2018 because he'd rode amazing all year, and he truly didn't deserve that.
No, definitely. Such a nice lad as well, if anybody's deserving of it. Soph, I'm going to get you to ask this next question. I'm standing back on this one.
So this is a question from Scott Sims. I'm going to read it as he's put it, Dave.
Yeah, I was going to say you can't put it any other way, Soph, can you?
It says, why couldn't you sort the Kawasaki out, or was it just a bag of shit?
His words, not ours.
Yeah, his words. Or did Kawasaki just didn't want to change the bike to suit you? Be honest. This is what it's
so unfortunately for me, the Kawasaki, I guess talking about 1990, 91, Alex signed me with the right intentions, and we all went into it with the right intentions. But the bottom line was that was their first perimeter frame, and it was a development bike. And at that stage in my career, I didn't need to be a development rider because I was kind of quite set in my ways. So, you know, there was a certain amount of to-ing and fro-ing to get the bike so that it kind of suited me. But the reality is I'd been spoiled for the previous 5.5 years with HRC because I never had to make a bike to suit me because it always suited me because it was a bike that was already developed. And I found that the Kawasaki it just didn't quite work for me. But I wouldn't say it was a bag of shit because I won on it. I did win on it. People forget that I did win Grand Prix on it. But coming from HRC to a development factory Kawasaki was in hindsight the wrong move, but at the time it felt right.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you were almost a test rider at the time?
Well, no, I did and I didn't. I mean, Paul Malin rode the bike very well. You can't forget, he did ride the bike very well. He'd always been on the Kawasaki at that time, so he rode it well. But it just, for whatever reason, coming from the Honda, having had the benefit of HRC doing everything, all of a sudden where it was kind of more about me developing a bike, it just didn't quite fit at the time.
Yeah.
But bearing in mind, you still finished 5th and 7th in the World Championships on the Kawasaki.
No.
Couldn't have been too bad.
And to be honest with you, this 91, they kindly allowed me to go back to the steel chassis. And, the first Grand Prix, I was running 2nd or 3rd in Payerne, and on the uphill triple, last lap or second from last lap, the Conrad come out the side of the engine.
My lord!
Yeah.
That's not what you want, is it?
Put me in a big nosedive, and the upshot was I dislocated my shoulder. And anybody that's dislocated their shoulder badly will know that it's not a good way to start a Grand Prix season. So 91, I think, would have been a lot better than it was, far better. But that injury.
And going back to the chassis that you kind of preferred, I guess, as well. But
better with it. I did gel better with it, but because I revved the bike quite hard in my Honda days, I joke about it being a chocolate Conrod in those days, but
I think you'll find it was electrical failure in the write-up.
Yeah, well,
they never take Conrod coming out the side. The factory guys.
I learned a lot of things from Alex. Bless him. He was a good PR man for whatever company he worked for. He was a good lad.
So moving to the next one. I've been on about this for the past couple of weeks now, but this is a question from Dan Merrifield, and he says, do you think a GP could ever be run at Farley Castle again with the right planning?
Absolutely. There is, if everyone could get their head round, the hard standing bit, which is one of the criteria at Grand Prix, as we all know now. If somehow we could work that, I think a British Grand Prix at Farley Castle for the promoter, if that was Steve Dixon, I'm sure that he would get far more people through the gate, because as a one-off event, you would get everybody go there to watch the top stars on an old school type circuit.
Is that more from a nostalgic point of view, would you say, mate? Or just the whole accompaniment, really?
I, for one, would pay to go and watch Tim Geiser and Jeffrey Erlings round Farley Castle. Who wouldn't?
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
And of course, we know how big a success is the Vets Nations at Farley as well. I mean, that's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger now, and that's getting to a point where they're going to have to seriously think about logistically wise, because that's getting a big concern now as well. I went there this year for the first time. It's an amazing event. Really enjoyed it. So
Farley is one of the places that could host the modern day Grand Prix. There would need to be a lot of a lot of discussion on where people would park and how everyone would park. But I feel sure that if we really wanted to push, it would be an amazing event.
I mean, I can, and it's probably the same for you. So I reflect. I mean, when I was with Farley, I remember having to walk across probably 3 or 4 fields, car parking wise, just to get to the track back in the day. When you won your world titles, Dave, there. So I'll be excellent to get back to that. I mean, 20,000 plus fans, trackside again,
and also for the promoters as well, because I watch Steve every year. He does an amazing job down at Matley, and I don't know what the cut-off point is for people coming through the gate for Steve to make money, but you want it to work for the promoter. you kind of look at all the effort that he puts in. You want it to work for him. So, if you could go to an iconic venue and all the red tape could be sort of worked around, I feel sure that it would work for the riders, the fans, and the promoter.
Well, they're definitely doing that because, at the end of the day, they're putting everything on the line for us, aren't they? So we need to embrace that and just help them out. So great question there from Dan. And go on then, so last question.
How often do you still ride, Dave? And given the choice, do you prefer the 450F or the 500 two-stroke?
Wow, that's a good question.
I ride as much as I can. So on average, once a week as the minimum. If I can, be 2 or 3 times. I enjoy to go, we've got my friends where I live in the village, they all ride out green laning around here. I've got friends in Exmouth, they go green laning, and I quite often turn up with them and go out for a ride. I love it. Back to the bikes, 250, two-stroke or 4-stroke. At my age and the way I ride, if I'm honest, I love the 4-stroke. I love the magic button. When I'm out with my friends and my heart's in my mouth and I'm breathing too heavy, to stall it, to have to find the kickstart, to find the level and kick it would be the one now. I just love the button.
Okay then. To ride, definitely, but to look at that 86 500 of yours, probably one of the most iconic machines probably on this planet.
Yeah, you say that, Dave. But kind of when I look at Guy's bike, if you get close to Guy's bike, that bike is a work of art. It is a full factory bike, and whilst I do love the look of the old style 2-strokes. I think the 4-stroke of Geyser's in particular, there's a lot of technology in there, and if you're lucky enough to get close enough, it's for there to you to see.
Definitely, I can only see from looking over in the awning and things like that. But if you put the standard bike up against it, there is probably nothing on that bike that is generally the same.
Certainly this year, from what we've seen, the bike is all new and all singing and dancing, but it is an amazing bit of kit.
The welding on the frame, the beefing up of the frame, it's all together, and that's something to see. If obviously we get on this. Hopefully get on with the rest of the season. How do you think that's going to plan out for the rest of the team for the rest of this year?
You mean for Grand Prix?
No, for the team after COVID-19. What plans have you put in place now, given the fact of you've not made one yet? How are you to see the team moving forward now?
So I think, I know the ACU had a meeting with manufacturers a little while ago, and it is their intention, when we are allowed, is to finish the season, which is great news. And us as a team, we're doing as everyone else is. I'm just going to go cycling now. I have one cycle a day, and just keeping indoors. And that's what the guys are doing. The guys are training hard at home. They're not riding at the moment because obviously we don't want to put any more pressure on the NHS. We're just towing the line the same as everyone else.
Brilliant stuff, mate. Brilliant.
There we are. So I don't know if you guys want to add any more bits and bobs in.
The one bit that we probably missed out on is in the very beginning, when my dad used to go to train with Wade training schools at Hawkstone Park. And there's one little story that really sticks in my mind was we used to have one pro a day teachers. And at the time, one day we had Roger Harvey there. And Roger was a top 5 Grand Prix rider at the time, 125 TC. And he taught us, and I had a thoroughly good day. And at the end of the day, we could ride around with them. And I remember riding Hawkstone, and Roger, he come by me, and I thought, I wonder if I can keep up. So I was only 15. I was 14. I thought, I wonder if I can keep up. And so I shot off after him and sort of sat there. And then halfway around the lap, I was thinking, I wonder if he's trying. And then we went over the finish line, and as we went up the hill, I saw him have a look over his shoulder, and I thought, he knows I'm in. Let's see what happened. So that lap I hung on, and it was a hang on. I'm not going to lie, it wasn't anything pretty from me. But at the end of that lap, I was breathing rather heavy, so I had to steady it up. But my thought process at that time was, Dave, if you work hard, you might be able to do this. And Roger was one of the real people that sort of made me realise that it was possible, you know. And he and many others, you know, Rob Hooper, Vic Allen, Andy Robertson, Dave Thomas, all those people that were seasoned pros, Bob Wright, they taught me so much in my early years. So yeah, I wouldn't change many things. You know, maybe the broken leg, I'd change that, but the rest of it, I'd roll with.
What about coming off the back of that then, when you say you were sticking with Roger there as it was? What do you think to these lads coming into the sport now, where motocross has evolved now over the years? It was you had to kind of tough and grind it out back in your day, whereas now you scrub everything. It's all about flow and things like that. What are your thoughts on the evolution of motocross then, as it were?
I just think it's the way the tracks are now, aren't they? Just the way the tracks are. I don't think you can compare the tracks of the 80s to the modern day tracks now.
Yeah.
No, and especially with the two strokes, when I can remember you going down Farley Bank with all those square edge braking bumps, that they used to be 10 times. Well, I remember back and reflecting back, they probably used to be 10 times worse back in your day.
Yeah, but you know, the difference in now is, you know, when you've only got to go to a practice track, because we live in a different world now where people, when they get injured, when they have problems, you know, they always look at the track. So the modern day track is always groomed. You know, if you turn up at a practice track now and it's bumpy when you start, you know, you've only got to listen around and everybody's moaning. Whereas in the old days, when we used to go practice, you know, tracks were the track. If you don't like it, go home.
That was that was the norm, wasn't it? That's what you put up with. So
the modern day rider that rides now, I think, you know, they're just a different mindset. We're in a different place in the world.
Living the moment till I die, and I'm gonna chase it.
So that rounds us up for episode 3 already, Darren, of the Live Motocross podcast. Dave, massive thank you for joining us today. I know it's probably given you a bit of something to do while you've been at home.
I'm just going to go, like I said to you, I'm going to go cycling. So cycling and cut the grass.
I won't be far behind you, mate.
It's like,
I won't be far behind you. I'm going for a cycle now as well, I think. Well, we can. Thank you so much for your time again, mate. Another great guest on episode 3 then.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There we are. So if you want to listen into any more episodes of the Live podcast, make sure you head over to Acast, Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes. We've literally got it on every single platform now. So just make sure you tune in, subscribe, and check out our new episodes.
No matter how hard we try.